Okay, people, here it is. This is the Stewart Whiskey Corvid, and this thing is beautiful, guys. Just look at that sheath for a minute. I apologize about the lighting. I have bad lighting in my house, so I've got kind of a strange setup going here. But let's just take a minute to admire that sheath. Look at that. That stitching is perfect. It's beautiful. And of course, ours, we won this at Blade Show 2016. We put our name in the drawing, and we were lucky enough to win it. So, you know, Creek autographed the back of the sheath, and it's got his mark down here at the bottom. And of course, the sheath came with the ferro rod attachment, and came with a ferro rod. And man, I got to tell you, this is a nice piece of leather. So, let's get to the knife. That's what you really want to see, I think. Now, this is the actual blade. You can see it's a small kukri, and you can see that it is hand forged. You can see all the forge marks on here, and it also has his mark there in the blade. And the handle is made out of that beautiful whiskey oak staves, which is white oak. The handle is riveted, so you can't ever take it apart, and we'll talk about that in a little while. Of course, you have a rounded spine on the blade. You got a small ricasso there. And so let's get some specs on it first, and then we'll just go from there. So we'll start out with the blade length. Now, I'm a machinist, so you can trust my measurements on this kind of stuff. So we're going to go from here to the tip of the blade, when actually you have a longer cutting surface because of the recurve here in the blade. So we'll just go from the corner, and we'll go to the tip on inches. And we're coming out right at 7 3/16 in the length. And for the handle, we're coming right at, say, 4 3/4. So I have large size hands, so you can see it fills my hand pretty well. And the handles are contoured, so they fit pretty well. It feels really good in the hand. It swells in your palm. You got the lanyard hole in the back, and I've made a lanyard to put on there because I like to have one on a large blade. But you might be able to tell the blade is hollow ground, which people question that on a blade made for chopping. But I think it's a very good choice for this, because I think the idea behind this knife is to be, of course, a survival type knife. And a hollow ground blade is a lot easier to sharpen. And it'll take an edge a lot faster than, say, a flat ground blade or a Scandi grind, and it'd just be easier to re-edge. And let's talk about the edge. This edge came razor sharp when I got it, and I was really surprised. I asked Creek when I met him at the Blade Show what the blade steel on this was, and he told me it was recycled lawnmower blades. Now, it might sound kind of funny to some people, but don't let that bother you, because recycled lawnmower blades are actually 5160 spring steel or 1080 high carbon steel, and both of those are great for a wilderness blade. They're very tough, have good edge retention, and they just work. They've proven themselves over many years, and I've owned quite a few carbon steel blades, most of those being A2 or 1085 or 1095, and I've never had a problem with them, and it just works. The blade is uncoated, which the only problem that I see with that, now this is a personal opinion, but I live in Georgia, and the heat and the humidity here are terrible, and any type of high carbon steel or metal that's uncoated is going to rust, and maybe you can start to see that, but I'm starting to pick up a little bit of surface rust here on the blade. And also, with that in mind, the handle, of course, being made of wood, will absorb moisture, and it's riveted on, so we can't remove that. So any moisture gets on it is going to soak into this wood, or it's going to just, lay in between the scales and on the blade, and it's going to rust kind of from the inside out. Now, you could change that. You could drill out the rivets, and you could put your own screws in here, but that, to me, I don't want to do that. It kind of defeats the purpose in what this knife is for. But a couple of Apoca boxes ago, Creek gave us this, the McQueen's mutton tallow, which is kind of specifically for that type of thing. And I keep it coated with mutton tallow, and I haven't really taken it out and used it heavily yet, but I think as long as I keep it well maintained, and as long as anybody keeps these blades well maintained, I think that they'll do very well. And they might take on a patina, and that will actually help protect the blade. So let's look at the blade thickness. So we'll check this out here. So the blade is coming in right at 0.196, which is just over 3/16, and that's a good thickness for a blade like this. Most of your K-bar knives are going to be 3/16 blade, and they work. I used a K-bar for years as my adventuring knife, and I never had a single problem out of it, except that it got lost. I like these handles. They feel really good. It being wood, and I've never really owned a knife with a wooden handle, but it feels warm to the touch. It has, even though it's smooth, it has adequate, sufficient grip, and I don't foresee it, being any type of a problem. Now let's look at the sheath. Now, I'm not sure who makes this sheath. I didn't really look into it that much, but man, this thing is nice. This thing is beautiful. I'm a fan of really high quality things, and this is probably the nicest piece of leather I've ever seen for something like this. I love the way it's carried. It's kind of a almost like a pistol holster with the way it carries on the belt. So it carries, like this. And I do carry a pistol when I go in the woods, and with the position I carry my pistol in, this fits right behind it, and it just works perfect for me. So I'm really, really liking it. And again, of course, it was autographed. And the ferro rod, it came with a nice fat ferro rod, and it has a piece of elastic and a tab to keep it secured. And that's a super nice addition to this whole little kit. The stitching is beautiful. I mean, it's absolutely perfect, you guys. So if you're thinking about buying one of Creek's blades, don't hesitate. The few points in this that I'm going to point out are just my personal preference and my personal opinion. I don't think they'll ever be a problem for anybody. But, knife guys, they can be kind of neurotic about things like that and kind of a little bit psycho. So, but I'm telling you, this thing, it's worth whatever it's going to cost. Now, with the ferro rod, one of the issues that I have with it is a ferro rod, of course, needs a flat, abrupt surface to strike it with really well, in my experience. And I said before, the back of the spine of this blade is rounded off, so it doesn't really have any abrupt edges to bite the ferro rod. So if you were to try to strike it, I don't think you'd do any good. So you'd have to strike it with the edge of your knife. And I'm psycho about things like that. And I don't want to ruin the edge of my knife unless it was an extreme emergency. And in most scenarios when I'm outside, I have other means of making a fire besides the ferro rod. So if it came down to it, last resort, of course I would do it, and I wouldn't have any problems with it. But it would just have been nice for this to have had a flat spot, maybe around this part of the blade, just to be able to get a good strike on it without having to use the edge of your knife. It might be a little awkward to try to strike it too, because with the edge of the blade, if you try to strike this down, you're going to hit the recurve part of your kukri first and dig it in the ground, and that's a whole other mess of problems. But don't let that deter you from one of these knives. This thing is probably one of the coolest knives I've ever owned, and I've owned a lot of cool knives, guys. I have, and I still do. And this one here, I can't wait for hunting season, because I want to carry this knife so bad. I want to take this out and try it. I still hunt. I don't have an ATV. I don't use tree stands or anything. I hunt from the ground. So in many cases, my knives end up being used to hack down small trees and things like that to make a travois, so I can carry deer out of the woods, fairly easily. So I didn't have this on the table, but I had it in the background. For comparison, here's an Ontario Rat 5, which for about the last 2 years has been my outdoors knife, replacing my K-bar that I lost somehow. So just for a size comparison, maybe you can see there. Again, I know my lighting's not that well. And here's another knife, and most of y'all probably have never seen or even heard of one of these. This is a Masters of Defense CQD Mark V, which is a survival / fighting / multi-purpose type knife. And I've used it quite a bit too, and it's made of A2 tool steel, which is another high carbon steel. And so you can see that there. The Black Hawk Company actually took over the Masters of Defense line, and now they're just cheap pieces of Chinese garbage. But these were all made in the USA. But, you know, again, just for a size comparison. Now, this is a 7 1/4 inch blade, and you know, this here we measured at 7 3/16, but you can actually see that it's longer, kind of, and you've got a much longer cutting surface there. Now, in other situations, a recurve blade is actually better for slashing and for general cutting, because with the recurve, when you're cutting into something, and let me get an example here. We'll just take this piece of wood I have here. Actually, I carved a spoon last Christmas out of same piece of this wood. But as you're cutting, it accelerates the cut because you've got more surface area than movement. So it'll cut deep and cut very well. So I doubt you ever have to use it in a defensive type situation, but I'm pretty sure you could lop somebody's arm right off with this. I don't want to go there. But I'll just do a little bit of cutting here on video for you to see. I've done some light chopping with it. I built an addle with it. Did a little bit of work here around the yard, and done a little bit of carving and stuff with it. So let's show it. The hollow grind on this actually works really well for doing small carving work, and even though it's a big blade, it handles really well for doing light small carving. So it just bites right into this, and this is 2-year seasoned hardwood, and it just peels it off almost effortlessly. I'm just using my thumb just to push it, just a push cut, and it'll just take it right off. I mean, I'm really liking this knife. I mean, it cuts so well. And again, I apologize for the poor lighting in here. I do my best. Now, when I got it, it came in a wooden box or wooden crate, which I'm pretty sure is very similar to what the crow's nest boxes came in. I'm not sure that all his knives are going to come in one of these, but I would assume they probably will. Let me cut this little light off, maybe you see a little better. Okay, but I'm assuming that some of them will come in this, and you see it's got the nesting material on the inside. And it also came inside of one of Creek's little canvas bags here with his name on it. And I try to keep it in that, and I keep it here in the house, but you see it still has gathered some surface rust. So it's kind of a high maintenance blade, but I don't mind that. I like maintaining my blades and my multi-tools. I'm kind of crazy about things like that. So anyways, let's look at it one more time. You know, the Creek Stewart Whiskey Corvid. And this thing is nice. I really, really, really like it. And I don't think anybody, if the rest of his knives are this quality, and I've seen the whole line, it came on the back of something, but I'm not sure if I should show that. But if you're a fan of Creek, or if you're not a fan of Creek, I think you'll still enjoy this knife. It works. And I think it'll work well for years. With the blade steel and the quality of construction of the sheath and of the knife itself, you know, you never can tell. You know, don't judge a book by its cover. It could just completely fall apart, but I highly doubt that. So we'll put it back here in the sheath, and I love this sheath, guys. I really, really do. This thing is just nice, and I feel very, very fortunate to have it. As far as I know, we're the only ones to have one of his whiskey knives, and we've had it for about a month now. And man, I just got to take it out every day and look at it. It's just nice, and it's cool. It's just so cool to have something like this. So thanks for the knife, Creek, and I hope you guys enjoyed this review. I know it wasn't great, but maybe I can do more stuff like this to come. So thanks.